Okay, I want you to close your eyes for a second. Well, don't close them if you're driving, obviously. But just picture this scenario with me.
All right, I'm with you.
It's, say, 6:45 a.m. The alarm goes off. It's still dark outside. You roll out of bed, you're groggy, maybe a little stiff, and you head straight for the shower to wake up.
The classic start to the day.
Right. You turn the handle, the steam rises, and you reach for that body wash. You know, the one that says Ocean Surge or Cucumber Melon or Rainforest Mist. You scrub down, and suddenly the whole bathroom just, it smells like a tropical waterfall.
It's a very evocative experience. It's designed to wake you up, to make you feel something.
Exactly. It feels refreshing. So you step out, you towel off. Then comes the deodorant something promising 48-hour protection with a scent like cool sport.
Yeah.
After that, maybe a splash of cologne or a dab of perfume. That's your signature scent, right?
Yeah.
You get dressed, you walk into the living room, and maybe it smells a little stale from the night before, so you grab that aerosol can, lavender field, and give the room a good spritz. You take a deep breath. It smells clean. You feel ready to take on the world.
That is the quintessential modern hygienic routine. I mean, millions, probably billions of people do some version of that every single day.
They do. But here is the question that we're going to wrestle with today. And I'll be honest, I have to warn you, the answer might just ruin that morning routine for you forever.
Uh-oh.
What if that smell, that whole sensation of freshness, is actually a lie? What if that invisible cloud you just created and walked through is really a complex chemical cocktail? One that's not only polluting the air inside your home to levels worse than a smoggy city street, but is potentially rewriting your body's own biological software.
That is a jarring thought, isn't it? Because we are so deeply conditioned to associate those specific strong scents with hygiene. If it smells like lemon, it is clean. If it smelled like pine, it is sanitized.
It's a Pavlovian response at this point.
It is. But if we actually look at the data, and wow, do we have a lot of data for this deep dive? We're talking about a massive class of chemicals that are, for the most part, completely unregulated and, more importantly, effectively hidden from you, the consumer. We're talking about fragrance.
And you don't just mean my expensive bottle of perfume.
No, I mean fragrance with a capital F. The legal loophole that appears on the ingredient labels of everything, from your shampoo to your laundry detergent to your scented trash bags.
The loophole. That sounds like a John Grisham novel. But we're talking about, soap and air freshener.
Honestly, it plays out a bit like a legal thriller. Because that one single word on a label fragrance, or sometimes it's parfum or aroma, it's just a placeholder. It acts as a black box. And behind that one word, manufacturers can legally hide dozens, sometimes hundreds, of different synthetic chemical ingredients.
And the research we're digging into today suggests that this secrecy is coming at a pretty significant cost, not just to our indoor air quality, but to our actual health.
A very significant cost.
So our mission today is to crack open that black box. We're going to unpack what is actually inside that invisible cocktail you spray on yourself every morning. We got a whole stack of sources here that is, frankly, a little terrifying, but it's all strictly scientific.
It is. We've got reports from the Environmental Working Group, or EWG. We have peer-reviewed scientific articles on volatile organic compounds, VOCs, and indoor air, fact sheets from the Vermont Department of Health, and some really deep policy analysis from breast cancer prevention partners.
Yeah, and I think it's important to set the tone right at the start here. The goal of this deep dive isn't to create panic. None of these sources are trying to scare you into living in a sterile bubble or, never washing your hair again.
Not at all. It's about the right to know. That's the phrase that comes up again and again. It's about understanding that when you spray that bottle, you are participating in a chemical exchange with your environment and, more intimately, with your own biology.
And right now, because of these legal structures, you're doing it completely blindfolded.
That's the problem.
Okay, let's start unpacking this. I want to begin with the most obvious frustration I had while I was reading through all this material. If I go to the grocery store and I buy a bag of potato chips, I can turn that bag over and see every single ingredient, even the weird, unpronounceable preservatives.
Right. Salt, potatoes, monosodium glutamate, all of it.
All of it. If I buy a can of soda, I know exactly what's in it. But if I pick up a bottle of cologne or a can of body spray, something I am literally putting on my skin to be absorbed, I just see the word fragrance. Why? Why is this one category of product basically exempt from the rules that apply to everything else?
That is the central question, isn't it? And to understand why, you have to go back in time a little bit and look at the history of the trade secret.
Okay, trade secrets. Like the secret recipe for Coca-Cola or KFC's 11 herbs and spices.
That's the exact concept. Historically, fragrance formulas were considered the crown jewels of a company. I mean, if you were a master perfumer in Paris in, say, 1920, and you created a groundbreaking scent like Chanel Number 5, that specific blend of essential oils and other compounds, that was your intellectual property. It was your art.
Sure, that makes sense. You wouldn't want someone to just copy it and sell it for half the price.
Precisely. So federal regulations, specifically the Fair Packaging and Labeling Act of 1966, evolved to protect those formulas. They created a special carve-out that allowed companies to list all those complex scent ingredients simply as fragrance so that competitors couldn't just read the label, copy the recipe, and sell a knockoff.
And I get that. I really do. In 1966, that seems like a perfectly reasonable protection. If I spend a decade mixing rose petals and musk to get it just right, I want to protect that invention.
Of course. That's the intuitive argument. It's the one the industry still uses today. But here is where it gets really fascinating and frankly a bit deceptive. That entire trade secret defense, it's largely a myth in the modern world.
A myth? How so? The desire to protect your formula is still real.
The desire is real, but the ability of the secret to remain a secret is gone. The technology has completely outpaced the law.
What do you mean?
I mean a machine. A specific machine called a gas chromatography mass spectrometer, or GCMS for short.
Gas chromatography mass spectrometry. Wow, that is a mouthful. It sounds like something straight out of a CSI episode.
It is exactly like something out of CSI. You've seen those shows, right? Where they have a single drop of some mysterious liquid, they put it in a big beige box, and a minute later a computer screen pops up with a perfect list of every single chemical and toxin in it.
Magic Science Box, yeah.
Well, the Magic Science Box is very real, and that's what a GCMS does. It essentially creates a chemical fingerprint of a substance. Think of a perfume as a choir. When you smell it, you just hear one beautiful unified sound, one chord. But a GCMS machine is like a master choir director that can listen to that one chord and instantly single out every individual voice. The soprano, the alto, the tenor, the bass. It separates the entire mixture molecule by molecule, and then it identifies each one by its unique mass and electrical charge.
So wait, if I'm a competitor, let's say I'm a big budget knockoff brand, I can just go to the store, buy a bottle of the expensive stuff, run it through this machine, and basically get the entire sheet music for the choir.
Within hours. And with incredible near-perfect precision, the secret is gone. Any major fragrance house today can reverse engineer a competitor's scent almost immediately. The whole game of corporate espionage and perfumery is just buying the other guy's product and running it through the machine. Like, I'll do it.
So if the competitors already know the secret, who is the secret actually being kept from?
You.
Me.
You. The consumer. And just as importantly, the independent scientific community that wants to study the long-term health effects of these specific chemical mixtures. The trade secret loophole has persisted long after it stopped serving its original purpose. It no longer prevents corporate espionage. Instead, it serves to shield companies from having to disclose ingredients that might be controversial, allergenic, or potentially hazardous.
And when you say shield, we're not just talking about one or two minor ingredients here.
Yeah.
I was looking at the data from the Environmental Working Group's testing from our source stack. They took a bunch of really popular name brand fragrances, big names, things you see in every department store, stuff I have definitely owned in my life, and they ran them through that Magic Science Box.
And what they found really highlights the scale of this problem.
It's wild. The EWG testing found that on average, these name brand fragrance products contained 14 secret chemicals that were not listed on the label. That's just the average.
Just the average. Some products had many, many more. 14 unlisted ingredients that are legally hidden behind that one word, fragrance.
14 chemicals per bottle. And we aren't talking about benign things like distilled water or aloe vera extract. These are active synthetic chemicals.
No, not at all. The testing revealed that many of these hidden ingredients are what scientists call sensitizers. These are chemicals known to trigger allergic reactions, things like asthma attacks, migraines, or contact dermatitis, that itchy red rash you get.
I saw one of the examples they pulled out was Giorgio Armani Acqua di Gio. I mean, that is a massively popular men's cologne. It's been a bestseller for decades.
It's a huge seller. And it was found to contain 19 different sensitizing chemicals. 19. Not on the label.
Wow. That's what really gets me. You could be someone who breaks out in a rash or gets a splitting headache every time you wear a certain shirt, and you would spend your life trying to figure out what you're allergic to. You'd blame the laundry detergent, the fabric, the food you ate, And you'd never be able to pinpoint the actual culprit because the culprit is legally invisible.
It's a diagnostic nightmare. And it gets even trickier for the really conscious consumer. You might think, okay, I'm smart. I'll just avoid the big brands. I'll buy the green stuff. I'll get the natural or the organic air freshener.
Right, that seems like the obvious solution.
But the research shows that is often a trap as well. This is what one of the papers called the green paradox.
So the green paradox, I saw that in the big PMC review of all the studies.
Exactly. That review, which was a huge systematic look at indoor air quality, noted that products labeled green, natural, or even organic very often still contain undisclosed fragrance chemicals hidden behind that same loophole.
So even the healthy stuff isn't telling you everything.
Not only that, but some of those so-called natural fragrances were found to contain chemicals that are officially classified by regulatory bodies as toxic or hazardous. We have this idea that if a chemical compound comes from a plant, it must be safe. But that's just not true. Arsenic comes from the earth. Poison ivy is natural.
That's a really good point. Just because an oil is extracted from a flower doesn't automatically mean it's safe to concentrate it, aerosolize it, and inhale it in a sealed room every day.
Precisely. So if you see fragrance on the back of the bottle, even a bottle with a green leaf on the front, you are still flying blind.
Okay, so that brings us to the actual chemistry. What happens when you spray that stuff? We've established that there are secret ingredients, but what do they do once they're out of the bottle? We have to talk about VOCs.
Volatile organic compounds, yes.
I feel like I hear this term a lot, but usually it's about like new paint fumes or gasoline or maybe that weird smell in a newly carpeted office, but you're telling me it applies to my body spray.
It does. Volatile is a chemistry term, and it doesn't mean explosive or angry. It just means a substance that evaporates very easily at room temperature.
Ah, so it turns into a gas.
Exactly. That is literally how perfume works. It's the entire point. If the chemical compounds didn't evaporate off your skin and float into the air, they couldn't travel to your nose, and you wouldn't be able to smell them. The scent is the cloud of VOCs.
So by definition, if I can smell it, it's releasing VOCs into the air around me.
Correct. And the sheer volume of this is something I don't think people grasp. We all worry about air pollution from cars on the freeway or smokestacks from factories, but one of the sources we looked at calculated the global emissions of VOCs just from compressed aerosols. So that's your deodorants, your hairsprays, your air fresheners, your spray cleaners.
What was the number?
Over 1.3 million tons per year. Wow.
1.3 million tons
Yeah.
of just deodorant and hairspray gas.
Yes. It is a massive and largely overlooked contribution to atmospheric pollution. We are pumping an incredible amount of these invisible gases into our environment just to make things smell like vanilla or cedarwood.
That's staggering.
It is. And it's not just about the volume of the stuff we're releasing. It's about how reactive it is. This is where we have to talk about what I like to call the indoor ecosystem, because you aren't spraying this stuff into a vacuum. You are spraying it into a chemically active soup that is the air in your home.
A soup. That sounds appetizing.
Well, think of the air in your living room. It's mostly nitrogen and oxygen, sure, but there's also dust, moisture, and importantly, there's ozone.
Ozone? I thought that was an outdoor problem. You know, smog alerts, the hole in the ozone layer.
We usually think of it that way, but we have low levels of ozone indoors too. It can be generated by electronics like laser printers or certain types of air purifiers, or it just leaks in from the outside. And ozone is a chemical bully. It's highly reactive. From a chemical standpoint, it is constantly looking for a fight.
Okay, so I've got this little chemical bully ozone floating around my couch looking for trouble. And then I come in and spray my citrus burst air freshener.
Exactly. That citrus burst scent is very likely coming from a chemical called limone. Limone is a terpene. It's the compound that gives lemon and orange peels their characteristic smell. And on its own, in the peel, limone is pretty benign. We eat it all the time.
Right.
But when that aerosolized cloud of limone molecules meets that angry ozone molecule in the air in your living room, they don't just peacefully coexist, they collide.
And that's the reaction.
It is a violent chemical reaction. It's called degradation. The ozone molecule literally rips the limone molecule apart. And the chemical debris, the shrapnel from that collision, that's the real problem. This debris forms what scientists call secondary pollutants.
This feels like a bait and switch.
Yes.
I thought I was buying a nice lemon scent. I didn't sign up for chemical shrapnel.
Nobody does. And the most common, most well-documented piece of shrapnel from that specific collision, limone plus ozone, is formaldehyde.
Whoa, whoa, slow down. Formaldehyde. You mean the embalming fluid, the stuff they keep the dead frog in from high school biology class.
The very same. A known human carcinogen, as classified by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. So you spray the citrus scent to make the room feel fresh and clean, but on a chemical level, you have just turned your living room into a low-grade formaldehyde factory.
I'm actually speechless.
Yeah.
That's horrifying. And we seal our homes up so tight these days, right? For energy efficiency, we have triple pane windows, weather stripping everywhere. We're keeping the heat in, but
We're trapping these chemical reactions inside with us. That is a critical point from the research. The concentration of these VOCs and their secondary pollutants indoors can be significantly higher than outdoors, sometimes 5 to 10 times higher, precisely because of that lack of ventilation.
I saw a study in our source material that looked at pandemic products. It's a perfect example.
A perfect real-world experiment. During the height of hygiene awareness, people were using massive amounts of disinfectant sprays and sanitizers. The study analyzed the air in homes and found these products were emitting hundreds of different VOCs, with lemon, pine, and ethanol being the most dominant. And again, the vast majority were not listed on the labels. So we're all diligently disinfecting our surfaces, but in the process, we were seriously polluting our air.
And it's not just our living rooms. This has bigger consequences. There was this case study in the briefing about AXE body spray that just blew my mind. It wasn't about personal health, like someone having an asthma attack in a high school locker room, though I'm sure that happened all the time. This was a large-scale environmental issue.
Yes, the California Air Resources Board, or CARB, actually got involved. This is the big state regulatory body that's usually focused on car emissions and smog in Los Angeles.
They go after car companies, not deodorant companies.
Typically. But they fined the parent company of AXE, Unilever, over $1.3 million.
A body spray company got a $1 million fine for causing smog.
Essentially, yes. The VOC emissions from the body spray were so high, and the sheer volume of use was so massive. I mean, just try to imagine every teenage boy in the state of California spraying it for 10 seconds straight every morning, that it was contributing significantly to the formation of ground-level ozone and smog.
That is one of the wildest things I've ever heard. Teenage boys spraying themselves in locker rooms directly contributed to the hazy smog over Los Angeles. That is the scale of fragrance we are actually dealing with.
It really puts the invisible cocktail into perspective, doesn't it? We think of scent as the small, personal choice, just an accessory. But when you multiply it by millions of people, it has real measurable atmospheric consequences.
Okay, so that covers the volatile stuff, the stuff that floats in the air and hits my nose and reacts with the ozone.
Yeah.
But what about the other part of the equation? Because if I put on cologne in the morning, I want it to last all day. I don't want it to just evaporate in 5 minutes.
Right. If you just use the pure essential oil or the volatile chemical by itself, the scent would be gone in an instant. To achieve that longevity, that staying power, chemists use compounds called fixatives. And the most common, and by far the most controversial, class of fixatives are phthalates.
Phthalates. Okay, this is a word that pops up a lot in health circles. I usually hear about it when people are talking about plastic water bottles or those soft rubber duckies for kids. But they're in my perfume.
They are everywhere. The phthalates are known as plasticizers. Their main job in industry is to make plastics like PVC flexible and soft instead of brittle. But they are also excellent solvents and are incredibly good at holding on to scent molecules, releasing them slowly over time. The one used most in fragrances is diethyl phthalate, or DEP.
And I'm guessing DEP doesn't just stay on my skin.
Not at all. It's readily absorbed into the bloodstream through the skin. It's inhaled from the air around you, and it is incredibly pervasive in our society. The CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, runs a huge national biomonitoring program, and they found DEP metabolites in the urine of 97% of Americans they tested.
97%. So basically, if you are listening to this right now, unless you have been living in a hermetically sealed bubble your entire life, you have this chemical in your body.
Statistically, yes. It's in all of us. And this is where we have to pivot from air quality to the direct health impacts, specifically looking at the endocrine system.
The hormone system.
Correct. Phthalates are now widely classified by scientists as endocrine-disrupting chemicals, or EDCs.
Okay, what does that mean exactly? Endocrine disruptor.
It means they can mimic, block, or otherwise interfere with the body's natural hormones, chemicals like testosterone, estrogen, thyroid hormones. Your body relies on these tiny chemical messengers for everything. They regulate growth, mood, metabolism, sleep, and critically, reproduction.
Hmm.
When you introduce a foreign chemical that looks just enough like a natural hormone to fit into the body's receptors, you start getting mixed signals. It's like putting a fake key in a lock. It might not open the door, but it's going to jam the mechanism.
And looking at the data from the Vermont Department of Health and the Breast Cancer Prevention Partners, the impacts of this jamming seem to be really different for men and women. Let's start with men. This part was, honestly, it was disturbing to read.
It is deeply concerning. A lot of the research has focused on male reproductive health, both in the womb and in adulthood. There's a specific biological measurement they use called anogenital distance, or AGD.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this carefully because it's a bit technical. Anogenital distance.
It is exactly what it sounds like. It's the physical distance between the anus and the genitals. In developmental biology, this is a standard, widely accepted marker for masculinization. In male infants, a longer AGD indicates normal exposure to androgens like testosterone in the womb. It's a key sign that reproductive development is proceeding as it should.
So it's like a ruler for hormonal health in development. And what does DEP exposure do to this measurement?
Multiple studies cited by the Vermont Department of Health found that prenatal exposure to DEP, and that means the mother's exposure to fragrance products while she was pregnant, was associated with a statistically significant decrease in anogenital distance in male infants.
So the chemical is literally altering the physical structure of the developing reproductive system in the womb.
That is the direct implication of the data. It suggests what's called an anti-androgenic effect. It's either blocking or lowering the action of male hormones during a critical developmental window.
And it's not just in the womb, right? It extends to adult men, too.
Yes. Other studies have linked exposure to DEP and its primary breakdown product, MEP, to DNA damage in sperm. We're seeing correlations with lower sperm quality, lower motility, and potential fertility issues in adult men who have high levels of these chemicals in their system.
It just connects to that broader, scary conversation we hear about declining sperm counts globally over the last few decades.
Yes.
It's obviously not just one thing, but it certainly sounds like this invisible cocktail is a major contributing factor.
It's a very plausible and significant piece of that puzzle. And then for women, the risks are different, but equally serious.
And women tend to have higher levels, right?
Generally, yes. Biomonitoring data consistently shows that women have higher levels of phthalates in their bodies than men, and the reason is pretty simple. Statistically, women use more personal care products on a daily basis. More lotions, more makeup, more perfumes, more hair conditioners, all of which are common sources.
So the total chemical load is just higher.
Exactly. And the report from Breast Cancer Prevention Partners highlights some really worrying links. There's evidence connecting phthalate exposure to the early onset of puberty in girls.
And why is that a concern?
Early puberty is a well-established risk factor for developing breast cancer later in life. The simple reason is that it increases a woman's lifetime window of estrogen exposure, and many forms of breast cancer are hormone receptor positive, meaning they are fueled by estrogen.
So the phthalates, which can mimic estrogen, might be pushing the body into puberty earlier, which in turn increases the long-term cancer risk.
That is the hypothesis that the science is pointing towards. It's this long, slow chain of events. It's so frustrating because, again, these chemicals are used for a functional purpose, to make the product better, to make the scent last longer. But the trade-off is the subtle, cumulative disruption of our fundamental hormonal software.
And cumulative really feels like the key word there. It's not like one spritz of cologne is going to rewrite your DNA.
Of course not. But we are bathed in this stuff from morning till night. It's in the laundry detergent on our clothes, the soap in our shower, the air freshener in our car, the lotion on our skin. It becomes a chronic, low-level exposure day after day, year after year, that our evolutionary biology has simply never had to deal with before.
And it's not just the phthalates acting as fixatives. There's a whole other class of chemicals we have to talk about, the musks.
Ah, yes. The synthetic musks.
Now, when I think of musk, I think of actual musk deer, which is kind of gross and also very cruel. We don't use that anymore, do we?
Thankfully, no, not for mass market products. Natural musk is incredibly expensive and ethically problematic. So, in the 20th century, chemists got very good at creating synthetic alternatives that had a similar warm, long-lasting scent profile. These are called polycyclic musks. The two big names you see in the research are galaxolide and tunnelide.
Galaxolide? That sounds like a villain from a Marvel movie.
It kind of behaves a bit like one in the body. The defining characteristic of these synthetic musks, which makes them different from phthalates, is that they are bioaccumulative.
Bioaccumulative. Okay, what's that? Does that mean they check in, but they don't check out?
That is the perfect analogy. It's the Hotel California of chemicals. Unlike phthalates, which the body does try to break down and flush out relatively quickly, these synthetic musks are what we call lipophilic.
Lipo, meaning fat.
Exactly. Lipo for lipid, philic for loving. They love fat. They're drawn to and bind with the fatty tissues in the body, and they stay there. They build up over time, year after year.
So the more fragrance products you use over your lifetime, the more of this stuff you store in your body fat.
That's right. And because of this, they've been found all over the human body, in adipose tissue, in blood samples, and very concerningly, in breast milk.
In breast milk. So it's being passed on.
It is passed from mother to child during pregnancy and breastfeeding. There was a study mentioned in the EWG report, I think it was from Austria. They tested the blood of a group of students, young, healthy people, and found galaxolide in the blood of 91% of them.
91%. That is just, it's pervasive. It's everywhere.
It is. It's become a background component of the human body in the 21st century. It's an inherited chemical burden before a child even takes its first breath.
So what does that burden do? I mean, if it's just sitting there in my fat cells, is it actually causing any harm?
It matters because they aren't inert. They don't just sit there quietly. The source material from the National Toxic Encephalopathy Foundation really dives into the cellular toxicity. What the research suggests is that these chemicals can increase the production of free radicals inside our cells.
Free radicals. Okay, those are the bad guys that cause aging and cellular damage, right? That's why we're always told to eat blueberries and other foods with antioxidants.
Exactly. Antioxidants neutralize free radicals. When you have too many free radicals, it causes a state called oxidative stress. The research indicates that fragrance chemicals like galaxolide and others like Leral and Lilial can directly damage the mitochondria within our cells.
The powerhouse of the cell. I do remember that from high school biology.
The one and only. The mitochondria are the tiny engines inside every cell that produce energy. If you damage them, you are fundamentally impairing the cell's ability to function, to produce energy, and to repair itself. It's like putting sugar in a car's gas tank.
On top of that, I saw that Lilial, another one of these musks, is listed as a sensitizer and has also shown estrogenic activity in studies on breast cancer cell lines.
Correct. So again, we see this recurring toxic theme. You have hormonal disruption combined with direct cellular stress.
It really creates this picture where the act of smelling good is actually putting our body into a state of constant low-level biological stress.
That is a very, very apt way to put it. And speaking of biological stress and how our bodies react to these chemicals, I want to pivot to something from that big PMC review that, honestly, I had to read 3 times to really believe it. It completely changes the definition of smelling.
Okay, you've got my attention.
Simple question. Where do you smell things?
In my nose, I hope.
That's what we all think. The nose is the hardware, it's the organ, but the software, the actual olfactory receptors, these tiny protein locks that are designed to catch the scent molecules like a key, we've always assumed those are located only in our nasal passages.
Right.
But the research is now showing that that is not true at all.
Don't tell me I can smell with my elbows.
Not your elbows, no, but your skin has them, your heart has them, your kidneys, your blood cells, and perhaps most surprisingly of all, your sperm have them.
I'm sorry, wow. My sperm.
Yes, human sperm cells are covered in functional olfactory receptors.
Why on earth does a sperm cell need a nose? What is it smelling?
Navigation. Think about it. It's a long, dark journey up the female reproductive tract. How do they find the egg? The leading theory is chemotaxis. The egg releases a chemical signal, a sort of perfume, and the sperm are literally sniffing their way towards the target.
That is both incredible and also incredibly weird.
It is a wild piece of biology. But here is the really important and slightly dark implication of that discovery. If these olfactory receptors are everywhere in your body, in your heart muscle, in your gut lining, in your reproductive cells, that means scent is not just an aesthetic experience happening in your head.
It's a biological key fitting into locks all over my body.
Exactly. When you spray that cologne and the molecules are absorbed into your blood, they aren't just inert passengers anymore. They are drifting past your liver cells, your heart cells, your prostate cells. And if a synthetic musk molecule looks just enough like the natural chemical key that those cells are designed to detect, it turns the lock.
And the cell reacts. It doesn't know it's just ocean mist from a bottle.
Mm.
It thinks it's receiving a legitimate biological command to do something.
Precisely. And that is the theoretical basis for why we see these unexpected links to things like cancer aggressiveness or hormonal changes. The review mentioned, for example, that certain synthetic sandalwood compounds can activate estrogen receptors elsewhere in the body.
And what about the cancer link? That was pretty specific.
It was. The research showed certain terpenes compounds called ionones, which give a violet or woody scent, can interact directly with receptors on cancer cells. Now, this is complex. In some lab contexts, they might inhibit growth. But in others, specifically in prostate cancer models that were mentioned, stimulating these receptors could theoretically increase the cancer's aggressiveness or its ability to metastasize.
So a chemical that's put into a cologne just to make it smell woody or masculine could theoretically be interacting with prostate cancer cells in a way that makes them more dangerous.
Theoretically, yes. The mechanisms are still being worked out, but the fundamental takeaway is that fragrance molecules are bioactive. They are not just aesthetic decorations, they are pharmacological. In a very real sense, they act like drugs.
They act like drugs. That phrase really changes how you look at that pretty glass bottle on the bathroom counter. And if they're acting like drugs, if they're affecting our hormones, our cells, our neurology, why on earth aren't they regulated like drugs? Why isn't the FDA stamping warning labels on these things?
And that brings us to the watchdogs, or perhaps more accurately, the lack thereof.
Yeah, who is flying the plane here? Is it the FDA?
Yeah.
EPA? Who is in charge of this?
It's surprisingly murky, but the short answer is that the fragrance industry is largely self-regulated.
Self-regulated. Okay, that phrase almost never ends well for the consumer. That's like asking a group of toddlers to regulate their own cookie intake.
It's a little more formal than that, but the potential for problems is similar. The primary bodies are the International Fragrance Association, which is IFRA, and its scientific arm, the Research Institute for Fragrance Materials, or RIFM.
Huh?
RIFM is responsible for conducting the safety testing on fragrance ingredients. Then IFRA takes that data and sets the standards for how those ingredients can be used in products.
That sounds official. I mean, they have institute and association right in the names. It sounds legitimate.
It's designed to sound legitimate, but as the Weaving Voices and Breast Cancer Prevention Partners reports point out, if you look at who sits on the board of directors for these organizations, it's a who's who of executives from the world's largest fragrance manufacturing companies, Givaudan, Femenic, IFF, the very companies that are creating and selling these chemicals.
So the people who are making billions of dollars in profit from selling these chemicals are the same people in charge of deciding if those chemicals are safe.
There is a massive inherent conflict of interest. The fox guarding the henhouse analogy is the one that's used constantly by critics of this system. And the result of this structure is what the Breast Cancer Prevention Partners report calls a data gap.
What kind of a gap are we talking about?
A huge gap in what they actually test for. Their analysis of the industry's own data showed that over half of the chemicals on the IFRA transparency list, that's a list of about 3,000 ingredients they admit to using, have not been sufficiently tested for chronic long-term health effects.
They test for the acute stuff, though, right? Like, does this burn my skin the second I put it on?
Yes, they're generally pretty good at preventing immediate severe reactions. If you spray a product and your skin falls off, they'll probably catch that in testing. But they have historically failed to look at the slow burn, low dose effects, carcinogenicity, endocrine disruption, neurotoxicity that might develop over 20 or 30 years of daily use.
And what about the other stuff in the bottle, the nonsense stuff?
That's another part of the gap. The functional ingredients, like the solvents and preservatives and phthalates we talked about, are often ignored in certain safety assessments because they aren't technically the scent itself, even though they are a major part of your exposure from the product.
And even if IFRA does set a standard, even if they say, okay, you shouldn't use more than 1% of this particular chemical in a body lotion, who enforces that? Who checks?
Nobody. That's the craziest part. Compliance with IFRA standards is completely voluntary. There is no government fragrance police that goes around testing bottles on the shelf to make sure they meet the industry's own safety standards. It is an honor system.
An honor system in a multi-billion-dollar global industry built on trade secrets and run by people with a direct financial conflict of interest. That is not exactly reassuring.
It isn't. And that fundamental lack of transparency and independent oversight is why organizations like Breast Cancer Prevention Partners and the EWG are pushing so hard for legislative change. They aren't even asking for bans. For the most part, they're asking for simple ingredient disclosure. Just tell us what's in the bottle.
Because if you knew it was there, you could choose to avoid it. But right now, that choice is taken away from you.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's pivot to the practical. We have dropped a lot of heavy and frankly scary science here. Hormone disruption, formaldehyde in the living room, sperm with noses, self-regulation issues.
So
It's really easy to feel overwhelmed and just want to throw every single bottle in your house in the trash.
it is overwhelming.
So what can the listener actually do? If I'm standing in the aisle at the drugstore tomorrow, staring at a wall of products, how do I navigate this?
It's about reducing the load. You don't have to be perfect, but you can be smarter and more strategic. The first, and maybe the most important thing, is to understand the labels. This is the biggest trap for consumers. You see the words fragrance-free and unscented. They sound like they mean the same thing. They do not.
Okay, what is the difference? Unscented sounds pretty clear to me. It means it has no scent.
You would think so, but unscented often means the product contains masking fragrances. These are additional chemicals added specifically to cover up the natural, often unpleasant chemical smell of the raw ingredients in the lotion or soap so that the final product smells like nothing.
So unscented is a trick. It's actually a scent that's designed to smell like no scent.
In many cases, yes. So you are still getting exposed to potentially sensitizing chemicals and phthalates, just without the floral bouquet. The term you want to look for is fragrance-free. That is the term that is regulated to mean that no fragrance ingredients, scented or masking, have been added to the product at all.
Fragrance-free is the gold standard. Got it. That's a huge tip right there.
Second, use technology to your advantage. There are great databases out there now. The California Safe Cosmetics program has a public database where you can look up products. There's an app that was mentioned in the BCPP report called Clearia. You can use these to scan barcodes in the store or look up specific ingredients. It helps you peel back that curtain of secrecy a little bit.
And what about the home environment? We talked a lot about that ozone reaction creating formaldehyde.
Ventilation is your best friend. It's so simple. If you are using cleaning sprays or if you absolutely must use a scented product, just open the windows for a few minutes. Dilution is the solution to pollution, as the old saying goes. By reducing the concentration of those terpenes in the air, you prevent that violent collision with ozone from happening in the first place.
And you just maybe use less stuff?
Honestly, that's the easiest thing. Just consider reducing the sheer number of scented products you use every day. If you absolutely love your signature perfume, okay, keep the perfume. But maybe you can switch to fragrance-free laundry detergent, fragrance-free dish soap, fragrance-free lotion. Lower the total chemical load on your body.
That makes a lot of sense. Pick your battles. You don't really need your socks to smell like mountain spring if it means wrapping your feet in phthalates and synthetic musks all day long.
Exactly, your body will thank you.
So, to bring this all together, we started this deep dive talking about that morning routine, that feeling of freshness and cleanliness. But as we've unpacked all this science, it really seems like our entire modern definition of fresh has been completely manufactured and sold to us.
It has. We have been taught to conflate the word clean with the word scented.
And that's the core irony of this whole thing, isn't it?
It is. I mean, think about the evolution of what clean means. For decades, marketing has sold us the idea that a truly clean home smells like pine or lemon or a fresh ocean breeze. But chemically, scientifically, clean has no smell at all. Clean is the absence of contaminants.
Right.
By chasing this artificial scented version of clean, we are actually polluting our own homes. We are actively adding contaminants, VOCs, phthalates, synthetic musks in a quest to make it feel like we've removed them.
Wow. That is a really profound thought to end on. We are polluting our own homes in an effort to make them feel cleaner. And that brings it all back to that trade secret we talked about at the very beginning.
Right, the secret that isn't really a secret anymore.
The competitors, they know what's in the bottle because they have the GCMS machines to analyze it. The manufacturers know what's in the bottle because they're the ones who mixed it.
Yeah.
The regulators, well, they could know if they demanded it, but they generally don't ask. The only person who is truly left in the dark, the only person the secret is actually still being kept from, is you, the person breathing it in every single day.
And that is why the right to know is so fundamental. This isn't just about perfume. It's about having autonomy over your own biology and your own environment.
Well, on that note, maybe tomorrow morning, Just try opening a window instead of reaching for that aerosol can.
Yeah.
It might not smell like a rainforest mist, but it will definitely be fresher. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the invisible cocktail.
It was a pleasure to be here.
We'll see you next time.